I try to avoid that, but I think it's unavoidable. No, I can't do this forever. I've been doing it since I was 21. As you move into your 80s, you say, hey, that's enough. In one final interview with Variety magazine, Robert Redford unexpectedly mentioned seven figures who shook both his career and his life. He recalled moments when he forgot all of his lines just because of a legendary actress's gaze, when he quietly waited for hours outside a hotel just to see a woman, and even when he nearly crossed boundaries with a male star, so much so that the studio had to spend thousands of dollars to buy back candid photos to keep the story hidden. So which stars made Robert Redford lose control? And did he face consequences for letting himself get swept into such an intoxicating whirlwind? 1. Meryl Streep. The time Redford almost lost control on set in 1984. Few people know that behind the classic frames of Out of Africa 1984 lies a surprising story where even a legend like Robert Redford wavered. By the early 1980s, Meryl Streep was already a shining name in Hollywood. Her name was tied not only to prestigious awards, but also to a presence that left anyone speechless. Los Angeles Times once praised her as an actress who embodies both intelligence and noble beauty, enough to make even politicians bow their heads in respect. People still talk about the 1982 charity gala in Washington when the whole room went silent as Meryl walked in. Even Senator Ted Kennedy sat in the front row, but every eye was fixed only on one person, Meryl Streep. So when she starred alongside Robert Redford in a project filmed in Kenya, the entire crew quietly acknowledged that Meryl was the center of attention. In a famous scene across the vast grasslands, Redford had to whisper a romantic line into Meryl's ear. But the moment she looked up with those clear eyes, Redford seemed hypnotized. He froze, forgetting every word. Director Sidney Pollack had to call cut 3 times, leaving the crew stunned. Everyone knew Redford was famous for mastering his lines, yet that day, he looked like a rookie actor. Journalist David Anson of Newsweek, who was present, wrote in his notebook, "This was the first time I ever saw Robert Redford completely lose focus. He looked at Meryl as if he had forgotten the entire world around him." Years later, he repeated this account on CBS Sunday Morning in 1986, sparking endless buzz. Even off-camera, Meryl unsettled Redford. She would chat casually, tell funny stories while the crew adjusted the lights. One time, she accidentally touched Redford's hand, and he immediately blushed. The whole crew burst out laughing, stunned to see Hollywood's Iron Man all flustered. A lighting technician still remembers Redford walking along the Nairobi River for hours afterward, deep in thought, as if trying to regain balance. When the film premiered in 1985, winning 7 Oscars, audiences praised the perfect chemistry between Redford and Meryl. But those in Kenya knew it wasn't just acting. It came from real sparks and real emotions that ordinary viewers could never imagine. Rumors grew stronger when Vanity Fair reported they once secretly dined together at the Plaza Hotel in New York. Though no photos surfaced, that was enough to set Hollywood abuzz. When reporters asked directly, Redford only smiled and delivered a line, "To remember Meryl is the only one who can make me forget I'm working." The story of Meryl Streep showed how close Redford came to crossing the personal lines he always set for himself. But the bigger storm came from a more complicated bond with his closest friend, Paul Newman. 2. Paul Newman, the soulmate who became a dangerous curiosity. After the hit, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid 1970 Robert Redford and Paul Newman became Hollywood's golden duo. Their combined image, one with a cold gaze, the other with a warm smile, made the New York Times proclaim these are the two stars who redefined American male charm. But behind the glamour was a complex story far beyond ordinary friendship. In the fall of 1973, during the filming of The Sting in Los Angeles, freelance journalist Michael Harrington of New York Post began following the production. Hearing whispers of something unusual, he grew suspicious. One late night, Harrington captured shocking photos, Redford and Newman leaving the set together, then disappearing into a small wooden cabin behind Universal Studios. In one frame, Redford put his arm around Newman's shoulder, the two embracing under a yellow street lamp. Harrington later said on a radio show, "At that moment I knew I had the story of the decade." But within 72 hours, Universal Pictures acted swiftly. They met Harrington at a Sunset Boulevard hotel. On the table lay a thick envelope, $25,000. The terms were clear: hand over all the negatives, and the story would never see print. In 1973, that was an enormous sum. Soon after, the New York Post went silent, as if nothing had happened. This silence only fueled rumors. Media in Chicago and New York speculated that Redford and Newman often lingered at the set until late. A lighting crew member told Chicago Tribune, "One night I returned for my gear and saw them still in the dressing room. The way they looked at each other was different. I pretended I saw nothing." The following year, in 1974, at an event at Beverly Hills Hotel, a People magazine photographer captured Redford with his arm around Newman on a balcony talking intimately. The photo was never published officially for editorial direction. Years later, a former editor revealed Universal had paid to block it. Even on set, the signs were there. Actress Catherine Ross, who co-starred with both men in Butch Cassidy, told Los Angeles Times, "Sometimes I waited for over an hour because they were lost in conversation. At times, I felt like an outsider in their relationship." The peak came in 1985, when Redford appeared on a CBS talk show. In front of millions, he half-joked, "Paul is such a strong figure of a man. Sometimes I wonder if one day we didn't keep boundaries. What would happen?" The audience laughed and applauded, but the remark reignited suspicions. Consequences soon followed. Some actresses claimed they were overshadowed by this special bond. Variety even suggested directors hesitated to cast both men together in major projects during the late 1970s. When Newman passed away in 2008, Redford said live on CNN, "I lost a part of myself." For the public, it was a touching farewell. But for those who knew the 1973 story, it sounded like a confession kept for decades. And just as rumors